9:19 exactly, news and views right here on Salam Media. Now, earlier on in the show, I had Christelle Groman from BDO talking to us about the repercussions for South Africa if the UK does not take us off the red list. We're talking approximately 1.5 million jobs at risk in the tourism industry. And we know that the ripple effect of those job losses would obviously equate to possibly 3 million. 3 million people being directly impacted if the UK doesn't take us off the red list. And still on the same trajectory, we're now joined by Isaah Mhlanga. He's the chief economist at Alexander Forbes. And when I say we're still on the same trajectory, we're talking jobs, we're talking about economy. I understand that our economy has improved marginally, but that still doesn't seem to equate in jobs for our 9 million unemployed youth. Isaah, morning, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Lovely to have you on the show. But sadly, we're talking about bad news as far as our economy is concerned. I understand there's been a slight improvement, but that doesn't equate into jobs, does it?
No, it doesn't equate into jobs. Perhaps to put context, if you just take the contraction last year of minus 6.4% on the basis of the revised economic growth statistics, this year expectations range anywhere from between 4% economic growth up to 5.5% economic growth. There is no one that has a doubt that this year is going to deliver quite strong growth, simply because we are coming from base effects. Also, the economy has been reopening, given the vaccination that is improving. But next year and beyond, that's where we have significant doubts on whether the economy will continue to improve. Just from the peak in terms of employment in Q4 2019, we have lost 1.5 million jobs by the end of the second quarter of this year. And that does not include the impact of the riots that we saw in KZN and also in parts of Joburg, which means when Q3 numbers come through, we will see again more jobs would have been lost, which means we really need to see strong economic growth that will be able to generate jobs from 2022 and beyond. But in our own projections, we expect 2.5% economic growth next year and still moderating to just about 2%. And that level of economic growth is not enough to generate the needed jobs in the economy. So the unemployment rate will continue to rise.
Okay, you talk about, obviously you're using economic terminology there, economist terminology, when you talk Q1, Q2, 3 and 4. Okay. You are referring to the first, second and consecutive quarters of the year. Am I correct?
That's correct. So I'm referring to the second quarter of this year when the unemployment went to 34.4%. That did not take into account the riots and the 1.5 million jobs lost. We're comparing the second quarter of this year from the fourth quarter of 2019.
Okay, you talk about a possible 2.5% economic growth. That doesn't equate into a security of jobs or creation of new jobs. How is that 2.5% going to help the country in terms of whatever? If it doesn't equate into jobs, what is it telling us?
So if we look at the relationship between economic growth and growth in jobs, every 1% in the economic growth generates only 0.4% in job growth, which means less than 0.5% in growth of jobs. So if we have 2.5% economic growth, it means we still have less than 1% of growth in the number of jobs. And in the modeling that we do, we find that for South Africa to be able to reduce the unemployment rate, economic growth must be at least 4% every year for 10 years consecutively. If we have economic growth that is less than 4%, it means the unemployment rate will continue to rise, simply because the number of people that are entering into the labor market looking for jobs cannot find the jobs which the economy is creating, because they are just too few.
Okay, we understand that there are four major factors impacting on our growth, economic growth, and creating jobs, job creation opportunities. What would they be? And, often when we talk to economists and business leaders, what they do tell us, and we know we're sitting at 9% of unemployed youth, they tell us that the youth should start thinking about entrepreneurship. But it's easier said than done, because they do need a kickstart. And because we're sitting in the situation we're sitting in currently, they're not getting those opportunities to enter into the space of entrepreneurship.
Absolutely. We have several factors. The one factor is in terms of the issues of skills. If you look in terms of the skills of our youth, a lot of the youth that enter into universities actually do not finish. And if those that finish, a significant proportion have qualifications or skills that are not required by the labor market. So they continue to remain in the unemployment cohort. But if we just look at the unemployment rate of graduates, it's very low, less than 10%, which means there is still a significant benefit in terms of job prospects for those that finish at least a post-matric qualification of some sort. And then you look in terms of funding for small, medium enterprises, that remains a significant challenge in South Africa. We are not an entrepreneurial economy which supports small businesses. Just take, for instance, something that would be relatable. You have someone that is manufacturing something in front of their yard. The municipality shows up and say, this area is not zoned for business, it's zoned for residential, therefore you cannot operate. We see that time and again, simply because our legislation at local government is not geared to support small businesses. So essentially, we are maintaining the aesthetics of first world countries in a third world country. So we don't have a good regulatory framework that supports jobs. And then we can also talk about the issue of general policy uncertainty at a national level. If we look in terms of our policies, they do not appear to be encouraging foreign direct investment from offshore companies, on the back of which small medium enterprises get a business. So those are some of the issues that we have that are preventing the economy from growing and that are preventing small medium enterprise from actually thriving. Big business, which is a fourth one, we see a significant concentration in a lot of sectors. In the banking sector, we have the big five. In the construction sector, big five. In transport, big five. And these are big monopolies that make it quite difficult for new entrants into those markets, which then actually prevent job creation and economic growth. So the structure of our economy itself is not geared for growth, which is why we are talking about structural economic reforms at a national level, because they're meant to change the structure of the economy such that it's conducive for investment, conducive for small, medium enterprises, and it's conducive to create jobs.
You touched on tertiary education, suggesting that people who get a degree of some sort puts them in a more attractive position to be able to be gainfully employed. But what a lot of our young people are also doing, they just go to a tertiary institution and just choose anything just to ensure that they're in the tertiary space. And what we sit with there is a big dropout rate because they've chosen the wrong courses, or when they do qualify eventually, because they've chosen the wrong course, they're just not employable, or they're just not enough jobs in that particular sector to absorb the tertiary leavers. How do we circumvent that situation? Does government and education institutions have to come together, compare notes, and decide what are the jobs that are going to be in demand for the next 5 or 10 years, and steer our young people in that direction? And
I
not
think
let
that
them make their own choices, and they choose the wrong courses or choose the wrong degrees and diplomas.
absolutely is the correct point that you're mentioning. There has to be collaboration between government and higher education institutions, such that they should not offer courses that are no longer producing skills that are required by the economy. But unfortunately, universities are also profit-making institutions, and as a result, they, for some reason, they continue to thrive on the basis of skills, of producing skills that are not required by the economy, to the detriment of those that are not well informed as far as what does the future of job markets look like. So I think government has a duty to educate, to inform the public about the future job opportunities, so that when young people choose studies, they study the right things that are required by the economy. So it has to take a collaborative effort, but also at a family level, those that have access to information, they need to be helping their younger siblings, their children, to make sure that they select the right things that will make sure that they are either better at entrepreneurship, producing the goods and services which are required, or they can get access to jobs that are available in the labor market.
Your predictions going forward in terms of not only the economy growing, but also jobs being created for our country. If you had government's ear, what would you be telling them?
So, in terms of economic growth, which is the basis of job growth, income growth, and reducing inequality in terms of income, we have about 4.2% this year, moderating to 2.5%, and eventually 2% for the next 3 years. And on the basis of that, we expect that the economy is going to generate about 1.3 million jobs over the next 5 years. So this merely reverses the jobs that have been lost during the advent of the pandemic from the second quarter of last year until now, which means we need much faster economic growth over the medium term to actually completely reverse and make sure that we have more jobs that are going to be created than what we had before the pandemic.
And that's where we leave it. Thank you indeed for your time. But just one final question. AI, artificial intelligence, very especially in our country and other third world countries, what sort of impact is it having on the job situation? And obviously, if we don't embrace AI, we're going to be left behind. So we're sitting with a conundrum here, are we not?
We are sitting with a big conundrum indeed, and what we have seen in light manufacturing, for instance, people are being displaced by machines. I can also give an example. You'll find some McDonald's that no longer need a cashier, where you actually go and pay, and then all you need is just to go and pick up your order, which means cashiers are also being displaced. So what we need is people that have the skills to be the ones that are producing that AI machinery. That's where jobs are going to be. But if you look into trends in other countries, there's actually a significant growth in jobs in the data science space. That's the new, as they say, data is the new oil. So whatever skills that enable you to be able to process data, do computing, work with AI machines, you will be better placed in the jobs for the future.
Isaah Mhlanga, Chief Economist at Alexander Forbes. Thank you indeed for your insights. And here's praying that our economy revives and we create jobs for all of our unemployed youth. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for having me today.
9:33 exactly, news and views right here on Salam Media.